stream. But, grace and peace be to everybody. Blessed be the Most High. We're going to just do this quick stream for you guys. Giving you quick updates. Zack Snyder, of course, said that he would definitely continue the Snyderverse, the DC Snyderverse, if Netflix was somehow to buy the licensing to the IP. So that's really good news. But of course, the question was posed to him. So he said, of course, definitely. The question was posed to him, though. It may be that it may be some other company may end up with the DC IP. And from there, it could possibly be that Zack Snyder gets to maybe use his brand, his version of the DC IP and continue it. When asked the question about comic book movies and the fact that the comic book movie genre seems to not be selling anymore, and that maybe there's a comic book movie fatigue, he said, "Well, the comic book movies now have been broadcasted for about 15 years, and now he's not saying it's fatigue, but he believes that the audience has become more sophisticated and they don't want a rehash of stories. They want something fresh and new." And so that was his take on it. Of course, Rebel Moon is coming up very soon, so looking forward to seeing that on Netflix. But with respect to what Zack Snyder said, I think there's another thing that people are forgetting. If you look at the comic book movies, at least from DC, I know I stressed this before, but if you look at the comic book movies from DC, you will see that most of the time, those comic book movies actually say something. And this is what Martin Scorsese was saying. Even though his movie Killers of the Flower Moon didn't actually do tremendously well at the box office because, of course, it had a limited release with Amazon Prime, it's still something where his movie says something. And I think it's very important not to just kind of flippantly throw things out there and to throw the, stereotypical generic tropes out there. And I think the one thing that separates Zack Snyder from maybe several other DC directors who have directed DC of recent times, especially under the studio when doing the DC universe, is Zack Snyder is trying to say something. It's not just about being fresh and having a fresh take. A lot of people think that Zack Snyder is all about gritty and, the dark world and all. That's not what he's about. He's about telling you something substantial. And I think that's where these corporate media, these companies, they get it wrong. They constantly think there's some sort of formula, there's some sort of way to get this thing, through a certain process, so that the masses would enjoy it. And the masses are not buying that anymore. In fact, if you look at the world today, because of the internet, I think masses are not just buying what mainstream media says anymore. Masses are not just buying hook, line, and sinker what the news outlets are saying anymore. People are now critically analyzing and seeing evidence in online channels and online things. And of course, there is also the people who are, lying, and you have to sift through who's telling the truth and who's telling lies, which makes a much more sophisticated audience and viewership. So, and especially with access to so much information, you know what's happening behind the scenes, you know what the directors really wanted to do, etc. I think that has kind of changed the landscape of entertainment and information, period. And now you have so many other private channels, even like myself, which is a small private channel that reviews movies, that contradicts what the general narrative for these usually mainstream outlets would say. When we think about Israel versus Palestine, the narrative is changing now. But the first narrative was, if you support Palestine, you're pro-Hamas. Then it became Hamas is a terrorist. Anything associated with terrorists needs to be shut down. And now we're finding out that Hamas is not as bad as people said that, the images that were portrayed, as people see actually live underground footage of what happened in October 7th. And so just a lot of misinformation purposefully. And we're learning that Israel's not that. It's not no saint. It's not no lamb. It's not no victim. That country has been, involved in espionage globally and has caused wars in other countries to, satisfy its own agenda and so on. So people are beginning to wake up to the truth of situations. And I really enjoy the fact that I've been part of certain movements, the Restore the Snyder Verse movement, BDS movement, and so on, and it's nice to be a part of these things because you begin to realize, okay, so a lot of people just got the wrong information. And as soon as people get the right information, they're able to make judgments because a lot of times the smoke and mirrors are all around us. You know what I'm saying? So it was very interesting to see that, and also to see that the audience now is not buying. The audience has learned to put their money where it counts. They're not going to buy the same BS that these mainstream media or these mainstream entities. But it doesn't mean that people are totally, disavowing or not doing anything with mainstream media. It's not that. It's just that now mainstream media has to check itself and not just produce narratives that companies that run this media are sort of giving directives to. It's almost like when you look at news has become a form of entertainment. It's not necessarily about facts anymore. It's not about proper journalism anymore. It's about entertainment. It's about entertaining people and creating a narrative. And where's this coming from? Right? The same thing with the entertainment industry, whether it's music, whether it's movies, whether it's TV shows or TV series or episodes. That's why Netflix, that's why Amazon, these companies in and of themselves, they're monopolizing markets, which is not necessarily a good thing. But the point is, you get now more media, you get more material that you wouldn't have normally gotten, you know, true mainstream media. Mainstream media will say, no, we're not putting this out. We're not putting that out, you know. And now we're getting that. Now, I'm not saying that Netflix and Amazon is the savior of mankind and that, but we know to boycott Disney. We know to boycott Disney now because, again, Disney has been receiving APAC money from the Israeli lobby groups, and that has influenced their content. And I'm not saying necessarily that Disney is in and of itself bad. There are some very good products on Disney. There are people who try to push the anvil on Disney, but Disney has a certain formula they've been using for a very long time as well. But their content, particularly, I noticed, has always been, and we all know, Hollywood has been influenced by the CIA, infiltrated by the CIA a long time ago. But the point is, we are beginning to realize, it's interesting that, as Christians, or as religious people, even Muslims, Christians and Muslims have a lot in common. We just don't realize it. And not only Christians and Muslims, but Christian, Muslim, and Jews, we have a lot in common. Because check this out, guys. We have all been saying Hollywood has been bad for a long time. We've said it's been compromised for a long time. But there are a lot of good people in Hollywood, don't get me wrong. But I'm just saying, we've said that for a long time. Since the early 2000s, we've been saying that. But now we have proof. And now artists in Hollywood, producers, we saw the Actors Guild have a strike. We had the Writers Guild have a strike. We're beginning to realize that this monopoly of people is now that systemic system which monopolized people and was able to do whatever it wanted with us as slaves to the system. We're learning now how to see what it is and call accountability to the people who have been doing this and ripping us off, right? And it's interesting now that it's not just about a commentary on it anymore. We are literally taking action on it. And I really love this. I appreciate that. And I think that Zack Snyder was a part of that process, which is why they tried to muddy and dirty this guy's name as much as possible. And even now, they're still trying to attack him online with bots and fake accounts and stuff like that. And we know it's Warner Brothers, and we know who in Warner Brothers is doing that. And the thing about it is, you have to understand, a lot of artists, I think about Ashanti, what happened to her. I think about what happened to, what's his name? The guy who's with Digable Planets, the rapper. All these guys, even my boy, what's his name? That's the guy I'm talking about. I can't remember. He's half Jamaican. But these guys, they disappeared off the scene because, again, the way how the system is, they can make you, they can build you up, or they can break you down. This is how the system is. It's a very, very elaborate system. And usually the artist has very little say in the system. You're like a pawn in that system. And it's so interesting how Zack Snyder was able to, in spite of all of that, produce these kinds of movies that said what they said. And goes also for guys like, you know, Ridley Scott, guys like guys like what's his name? I just said his name. He had wars with the studios. James Cameron, what's the guy's name? Martin Scorsese, right? Martin Scorsese. You know, even George Lucas talked about the difficulties he had, just kind of, and I'm not saying that part of that is not part of the process, but it's really difficult when you're dealing with people who only think of the bottom line. They don't care about the art. They don't have a background in anything, and they're not even film enthusiasts. They just came to turn over a profit. It's a totally different game. And these are the people who try to suggest things to the people who are professionals in the area with the expertise. So that's what happens. But now, where we are aware of this, we as fans, as the audience, which these people sometimes are they no way connected to, like they have no idea. They're doing all their surveys and stuff, but they're not connected organically to what the audience wants. They get this feedback, but they decide. And I think some of these people are just on a power trip. I think really, I seriously think so. They've got this power instead of using the power to edify everybody like Superman does, or like, you know, superheroes do, because it's supposed to be the superhero job. Instead of doing that and enabling people and empowering people, what do? What do they do? What do they do? They try to consolidate power and use it to do corrupt practices, right? How many of these producers filled their pockets on a flop? How many of these executives have made money off of flop movies? I'm just being real right now, right? And it's gotten so bad that congressional people in Congress and in the Senate are looking to investigate that. In fact, the merger between Discovery and Warner Brothers is being investigated. They've asked the Department of Justice to investigate this, right? So this is the problem with the situation. And we as people on the ground, we as people as the audience, we need to put pressure on them, just like how we put pressure on anything. You run campaigns and you put pressure. Unfortunately, I'm kind of busy, but I'm always making time for these campaigns because these campaigns are worth it. And again, as a Christian, it's one thing to talk about it, but it's another thing to do it. And so that's what we're doing. Now, with respect to Rebel Moon, right, which I've been watching all the little features and highlights and stuff. And shout out to my boy Damian Anton Vincent, even though I think you're still on the wrong side of the road politically, my bro. But I see you starting to see eye to eye with me on certain things. I would say this. I would say that basically, we have that power. And always remember, we are more than them. It's the numbers. They have to influence us. They have to persuade us. They have to persuade us. It's not we have to persuade them, because we can in volume. But we have to stay focused, and we have to continue to use the different strategies and means that we have to be able to get what we want. And this is what's happening right now, and everything's coming out to the surface, ugly, good, bad, or ugly, with Israel and Palestine, because the world has risen up and said no. We say no to this. The grassroots has risen up, and that's what has to happen, because otherwise, who's next? Okay, the Hutus, all right, in Rwanda. Then we have what's going on in Congo. Then we have what's going on in Eritrea with Ethiopia and Sudan. Who's next? They ethnic cleanse Azerbaijan. So what's next? If they could do those things and get away with it, won't they do it to you and me and make us terrorists? So we have to be able, and in fact, that's what's happening, right? They try to threaten anybody who supports Free Palestine as a terrorist. They're suddenly pro-Hamas, and they're going after all the pro-Hamas people, right? That's what they did. But it didn't work. Why? Because you're going to go after 7.6 billion people? Can you do that? Can you try that? You can't even ethnically cleanse properly tens of millions of people. How are you going to cleanse the world or purge the world of 7.6 billion people? It's not going to happen. So we still have the upper hand, and there's a lot of smoke and mirrors, and we're starting to see through it. And trust me, they're trying something. They're going to try something else. It was COVID. This is the way how some of these people think, because they've been at a certain place where they're disconnected to the average guy. And they don't have eyes on the ground like that. They're disconnected. So they think of us as things to be moved and played and pawns. But I'm sure if they would have experience on the ground, to actually have personal experience on the ground and that connectivity with humanity, they would think differently. But you got to show them that. You can't tell them that. Talking does nothing. People understand money. People understand numbers. People understand economy. People understand that. You have to show them. You can't be telling me talk, don't do nothing. Look at how much talk happened in the United Nations. Look how much talks Warner Brothers had with different people concerning their creatives. They said, oh, we're going to do quality movies, right? What quality movie came out the last couple of years? Not one. Every single one of those DCU movies flopped. So you can talk. It don't mean it match up to what you're saying. You know what I'm saying? So that's why when we look at Rebel Moon, we support the Rebel Moon, of course. Rebel Moon just seems to come out at the right time, which is happening with the Israel-Palestine crisis. Those people can get to see Rebel Moon, please do so. I will try to renew my subscription to be able to see it. Hopefully I'm able to see it. But by and large, this is what is going on. And that's the difference between Zack Snyder's comic book movie content and those other. I'm not saying, okay, so we know that Todd Phillips does great movies, right? Again, he makes you think. He does case studies. He does psychological evaluations. We saw Matt Reeves, and he gave you what you wanted. Some of you fanboys out there gave you what you wanted, but he didn't really go deep. He did some things, but it wasn't deep, right? But when you look at what Zack has been doing, what Ridley Scott has been doing, what's his name? I forgot his name again. But when Martin Scorsese's been doing and so on, these guys try to give you something. They try to give you something. And Martin Scorsese is like 80-something years old, and he's still trying to give you something, right? The movie Killers of the Flower Moon is talking about all kinds of things, how minorities are treated. We're still struggling in the year 2023 to be treated with respect, that our cultures or backgrounds, and you know what's the weird thing? Our cultures and our backgrounds not only add, but sometimes are superior to the narrative out there. Superior. But it is what it is. So I am Christ, I am disciple. Blessings to everybody out there. Praise be to the Most High God as always. And I'm gonna catch you guys later. Shout out to my boy Lord Cool J in the building. Shout out to Lord Cool J. Shout out to also my brother from Norway, the Norwegian brother. You go by the name of, you used to go by the name Pika Shades, but I don't know what you go by right now. Shout out to you, as well as shout out to my boys, and who come here all the time and you support. And to my Islamic Muslim brother, Mr. William, again, shout out to you, brother. So this Islamophobia stuff, it's just like the same thing. They talk about anti-Semitism, but Islamophobia is more the thing that's going on right now. People are seeing things through a certain lens, and it's like you can't You have to be able to change their perspective before they can really see the light of day. Some people, they just can't see what you're saying, and therefore the conversations with them will amount to nothing. Trying to talk to people about certain things, just not, you have to literally show them what you're talking about. They have to be able to see it to get the actualization or the realization of what you're saying. Anyways, that's what I got for you guys. I am Christ, I am disciple. Blessings to all of you. Oh, shout out to my sister out there, who I just want to promote a bit. She does great meals. Check out her channel, right? Check out her channel. All right, I'm gonna put the link down below. Catch you guys later. Peace.